So today is a very special topic. I love thinking and talking about mentorship because it is so often misunderstood. And we've assembled a completely all-star panel and David to be able to share with you some of the key pieces of what each of us have been doing in our ecosystems. We all have very different directions and experiences with the type of entrepreneurs that we mentor and how we support them. So welcome to Mentorship Excellence, Supporting Internationalization Efforts for Startups. And I think we're going to end up talking a lot about scale-ups, journeys, best practices, huge mistakes. So it's going to be a little bit of a failure stories meets best practices. And I want to make sure we have a lot of time for Q&A because obviously that's where the fun really starts. All right, so I've been promised a flip. Are you going to join us at any point today?
I'm going to do a mini flip.
Okay. So we have a really special group of people up here today. So I'm going to start with David Koo, representing Taiwan, who has just been doing really unique things, including supporting some of the companies I work with for Taiwanese entry. So I'm super happy you're here. Swethil Kumar, who I am so excited to hear about his work in 4 countries plus, but really at the heart of starting ecosystems from scratch, helping companies at all levels, and most importantly, helping ecosystem providers really build out the right infrastructure to make sure it's all real, authentic, data-driven. So I'm so happy to have you here. Mike Ducker, who has been doing work, I mean, I don't even want to know how many countries. You can tell us how many countries you've done work in. Dozens and dozens and dozens.
I haven't counted.
Yeah, it's that many that he has no idea. And he's been building out not just mentoring programs, but also mentoring for building out investment funds. He's been building out training infrastructures. So I think this is a really key piece of it. Our conversation today is mostly going to be about mentoring entrepreneurs themselves, but the storyline of how much mentoring needs to occur to build a proper ecosystem, please feel free to ask about that in the Q&A section. And last but not least, oh my gosh, Mr. Jeff Hoffman. Every time we find an amazing entrepreneur and we start working with them through EWC, through Gen, whatever, they always say, Jeff found time to help me, and I don't think he sleeps. I don't think he does anything but talk to entrepreneurs all day and occasionally to his lovely partner, Jennifer. I don't think he talks to anybody but but entrepreneurs, because the amount of people who tell me what he's meant to them and the difference he's made, you don't sleep, I'm sure. So Jeff Hoffman, serial entrepreneur, expert on everything I've ever asked him about. It's amazing.
Mike wanted to be taller than me today, so I'm just going to say.
Oh my gosh.
I appreciate it, Jeff. I appreciate it.
This is going to be a big love fest. Lastly, I'm Dr. Susan Ma. I run education for Gen, and we run Gen Accelerates. We designed EWC and run all of the fun pieces of that, matchmaking and supporting ecosystems all over the world. So there's only 4 mics, so I'm just going to stay up here, because why wouldn't I? All right, so let's get started with David, because I think one of the cool things about David is he's always been focused on the ecosystem, but he started to find a huge challenge in companies trying to enter the Taiwanese market. And I've been amazed by the level of support. So David, can you give a little bit about your background and really what you've kind of pivoted to as far as this very, very specific area of mentoring that you now excel in so much?
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is the Rockstar audience. Thank you. It's my honor. And I'm just right going to answer Susan's question. I started with Startup Weekend with 2 failed business because I tried to prove to my parents that I was better or I made it. And that was definitely the wrong reason. So before I start my 3rd one, my wife said, why don't you tell everybody about your failing stories and maybe people will pay for it. And then that's how I thought incubation center works. Then I moved to acceleration. Lately, we found that there was a particular niche that there's a lot of IoT company want to come to Taiwan due to there's the China-Taiwan war with chipsets, with semiconductors. So, but these companies didn't come to Taiwan just for that. So we developed 2 markets in 10 months. So come to Taiwan, build your R&D team, and we take you to Japan. And there's a lot of Japanese VC that want to invest overseas companies because they want this team to come to Japan and teach and sharing what entrepreneurship is all about. And I didn't know, I found my little product market fit. People actually want to pay for this. So I start with $3,000 and now we're able to charge $20,000 for 6 months of work. And guess what? Who pays? The VC pays. The national program pays because they want to see these teams to take 10x progress. So Susan, is that a good answer?
It was a little bit more of a commercial than an answer, but okay. The point is, whatever, even with mentorship, even with acceleration, with incubation, whatever it is, it's all about that product market fit.
Yes.
So I'm glad you found it, but no more commercials if possible.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. I'm sorry. Bad. Slap.
All right. So Jeff, we've already established you don't sleep. Can you tell us about how you have evolved as a mentor over time? Because you've seen it all, done it all, and you remain so humble and you're such a good listener. How do you find time for all those people? And especially, how do you make time to make sure you're getting the full benefit and they're getting the full benefit of that time together?
So there's a couple of things. Being a good mentor was a learned process. My first mentor ever was actually a bad mentor in that I watched him do a lot of bad things that I said never be like that, which was too bad because I went to get him as a mentor because he was the most successful person in the industry. But I learned something really fast, right? Which I said, unfortunately, you may have to hear this again in the last session, which is lesson number 1 is a mentor isn't someone from your industry. A mentor is someone you want to be like one day as a human being. But I didn't know that. So I picked my first mentor because he was successful in my industry and he was not a good human being. And so now I understand it's just about picking somebody you want to be like. So that was a huge lesson because I would watch him and you know what he would say to me? That's what it takes to be successful. The way he behaved. And I was like, then I was not unhappy when I was broke, so I'm okay being broke and being unsuccessful if that's the price tag.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. But the evolution, the most important thing learning in mentorship is that, and I will tell you this because I see this by watching mentors do that. Someone comes to you as the mentor, therefore you're the expert and you know stuff because you're successful. So what mentors do is they just start telling people what to do. The core assumption is, I'm smarter than you, I've been successful, I know all this stuff, so I'll just tell it to you. That is wrong. That is not the way to do it. The key to good mentorship is to meet them where they are, not where you are. So for example, we were just in the other room mentoring, he's a high school kid, right? Some high school kids. I don't start by saying, I'm Jeff, I've done all this, let me tell you how to do it. I start by saying, tell me your story, where you are, what you're trying to do, what's important to you. I listen 10 times before I ever speak, but I didn't know that early on. So mentoring is about meeting them where they are, and every person I mentor is a completely different relationship because it is a 17-year-old, is it a Cambodian, is it somebody in healthcare? What is it they're doing instead of you saying, I'm going to tell everybody how to do stuff. And that's kind of the traditional, unfortunately, I just see it too many times. Mentors where I say, do you know anything about the person you're talking to? And they're like, no, they need to know about me. I'm the expert. They came to me. And I'm like, wow, I'm glad I didn't pick you as a mentor because it'd be nice if you were actually more interested in them.
We're going to talk a lot about that later with the mentorship training because it has to be all about listening. So I'm really glad you brought that up right away. Mike. You've mentored such a wide variety of different types of people, but let's focus on startups now. We'll get to Scaleups in the next round. So tell us a little bit about your background and any kind of wisdom you want to impart from the first minute.
Let me just say, I feel like I'm a PhD student on how can we effectively engage successful people like Jeff to help entrepreneurs. And I think I've had a 15-year journey to try to understand how we can do it, because at the heart of every entrepreneurship program, whether it's an EIR, if it's a mentor, advisor, somebody who's kind of doing check-ins. It's bringing experienced business people who've done something and accomplished something and helping entrepreneurs. That's the heart of every entrepreneurship program, right? And so, but how do you make that magical? How do you get the impacts that Jeff was talking about? And so, I've kind of just gone through a whole journey just from, my first times doing startup weekends, kind of seeing some of the magic, to really trying to understand how this interaction and relationship kind of establishes and kind of brings out the beauty of the relationship, but then even the economic part of the impact of that relationship.
A little bit about your background, though, the kind of work you've done, because it's
So
everything.
I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Forrest Gump. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm always in interesting places. So I've been helping entrepreneurship development for 17 years, I think now. And I have to say, like in 2000, 2004, 2005, when we did entrepreneurship development, we did the business plan competition. This is when a bunch of old guys would criticize a bunch of young guys on something they're trying to do, the banker, the lawyer, and I'm sure Jeff this is exactly what Jeff was talking about. And then the thing that, I'll just get to the heart of one of the things I've learned about mentoring, because I don't want to take up too much time. The thing that I've learned is if you create a powerful relationship between a mentor and an entrepreneur, there's a trust, and that trust can lead to accountability. And I found that, that's what I've learned, is that what you're trying to do is trying to create an accountable relationship where the entrepreneur really wants to be accountable to its company, and the mentor kind of keeps them accountable. And you can't just create that. There's sort of a process that has to happen. So where the entrepreneur is kind of feeling like, well, I'm going to talk to Jeff. And, when I told him last week that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, I want to make sure I do that because Jeff's giving me his time. I trust him. He really wants me to be successful. So I'm kind of committed to that relationship. And for me to be committed to that relationship, I have to be committed to my business. And when you create that type of relationship, it's powerful. That, to me, is the most killer impact app that you can have in an entrepreneurship program. But it's not as easy as people think in doing that.
Wait, I want to compliment him to a program that he did. So Mike and I went to Egypt during the revolution. We were told that it was over, but in fact we went during the revolution because there was a second one. But I don't know if you remember the woman that I called the jam lady. That was the woman that was making sandwiches. The point is, Mike created an environment in which it made mentoring possible. Mike created this the group that we were, the master class, the group we were in, it was mostly Egyptian women that I'm talking about at this table, but he set a tone and environment where everybody was kind of on an equal place, right? I didn't want to walk in and have these women feel like we weren't all on equal footing. I didn't want somebody feel intimidated or anything, but you created an environment that allowed us to build those relationships that allowed me to help that Egyptian woman with the sandwich business. If you hadn't set that tone, it would have felt different in the room and we wouldn't have made a connection. So you do it really well.
And last but not least, Swethel, please give us a little bit about your background and the incredible work you're doing across continents.
Thanks, Sushan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shwetal Kumar. I'm from India, but living in the UAE for almost 21 plus years. I work predominantly for a sovereign fund called Mubadala Investments, one of the largest funds based out of Abu Dhabi. And I had a privilege to even working with the government of Abu Dhabi for launching a startup ecosystem called Hub 71. And after I kind of launched the ecosystems, I fell in love with the startup ecosystem, and hence I left Mubadala and started Startup Skill 360. So the work that we do in Middle East is kind of building the ecosystem, working with all the key enablers, and essentially supporting the startups to scale up. We also launched the Crossroad in Georgia in Tbilisi for Ministry of Economic and Sustainable Development. So we do a lot of stuff in ecosystem buildings. Susan mentioned about the 4 countries that actually we run also Entrepreneurship World Cup in the UAE, and this year we actually planning to do in 4 countries, which is UAE, Madagascar, Morocco, and Malaysia. So that's all about my background. Coming back to the main topic of entrepreneurship, for me, it's an art, right? There is no, to be honest, one rule all fits solutions. The model pretty much goes differently with each mentees. So, like Jeff mentioned, that you need to really understand them, listen. So it's more about the good listening skill that you actually, show to your mentees. And also help them navigating in the ecosystem, overcoming with the challenges that they face, providing them with the resources and networking. And it's a relationship which it's not like a one-time things, which it's something which you go for a long term. How in terms of building the business, they establish the trust on you, and then hence it's essentially you're marrying. If you're a really good mentor.
Thank you very much. So I think we should start very simply with the way mentorship has been defined in the startup ecosystem. I mean, I go to visit an accelerator and they'll have people come in for a few hours and call it Meet the Mentors. Mentorship is a long-term relationship where they're committed to each other, and you're not necessarily helping them build the business, you're helping them build themselves. So I want to go back to our topic here today, supporting internationalization efforts for scale-ups. Mentoring startups is very different than preparing them for internationalization. So whoever wants to chime in first, I'd love for you to go through a few of those key differences you found, because it's not product market fit necessarily. It's complete change of mindset to be that executive and understanding market entry, growth. So that high growth area needs a very different set of relationships. After that, I want to start going into a little bit of training and support, but if we can start, whoever wants to volunteer first, differences between that startup excitement, getting some validation to, okay, now I'm ready to go into other countries. David?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And before I start, I just want to say Susan and Jeff has been a very critical role model in the way why I'm in mentorship, because we've been talking about, and the common thing that both lovely persons said is not about the mentor succeeding. You gotta have a fundamental heart that you want other people to succeed, and you want to give the unlimited of your capability. So that's number one. Being a mentor is truly to see other people to succeed. And number two is knowing the difference between consulting and mentoring. And for me, throughout 20 years of doing a lot of mistakes, mentoring for me is helping to co-create the clarity about how to move forward. It's okay for the mentor not to have the answer when especially come to internationalization. The consulting is more about, here are the steps, I've been doing this for 10 to 100 times, and take it. So now come back to what I said, helping scale up for internationalization is very difficult, and the first challenge that I face is you may not speak to the founder directly. You may speak to their business development person or their investors. So there's a lot of navigating amount, what is the path moving forward? So, and that was a challenge that I had to learn as a mentor, because person A saying needs this, but the founder will say that. So there's a lot of, and you gotta have patience. It's very normal when you're especially dealing with a team that is about to go IPO in 12 months. There's a lot of things. So I think having that embracement of that chaos of communication is probably that you have to learn. And the second thing is really need to work with the key decision maker to see what the path is forward and have multiple options for the team to make. So the founder will see, the founder will have a certain plan to path. There's no right, because when you're dealing with scale up, there's only result. And sometimes they would focus result more than process. So I think the second thing is to really come up with different options, provide clarity to different group, and really empower them to make that choice. And then number three is when you're doing internalization, you got to know the local law and local resources very well, because that's where they depend on what is legal, what is illegal, and especially in Asia, there's something called not illegal Okay, so in the American term, it's called sandbox, but in Taiwan, it's called, not illegal. So that's my 3 things, and we can elaborate more.
I'm gonna just touch upon this issue of not having all the answers. Sometimes the best thing is the mentor just asking a lot of questions and teaching them how or where to look for the answers. Because it's very easy to blame a mentor when a mentor suggests something or says something, and the bigger they get, they have to own their strategy. You can't necessarily tell them what they should be doing. So I'm really glad you mentioned that point, David. Jeff?
Yeah, actually, I want to follow up on that, and I just want to add something to this. For anybody out here that are mentors, that is an important piece of advice. I was sitting on a panel like this once at a huge event, and a founder asked a question, and they went down the line, and everybody answered, and they went to me. I did one thing I didn't mean to do. I turned and looked, and I said, when I don't know the answer, I just say, I don't know the answer. But I didn't mean to look at my colleagues, because that was bad, right? Because every one of them gave a completely wrong answer because they didn't know the answer. And the point of that is, when especially a young person is looking up to you and you're the mentor and you think, I'm supposed to know the answer. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know, ask someone else. But mentors always answer because they think they're supposed to. And I listened to all these wrong answers and I was like, anyway, so I'm glad you guys hit on that. It's okay for a mentor to say, I don't know, don't answer it if you don't, because you're giving dangerous information. So a quick thing to your question was the difference between startup and scale up. And I'll just say this quickly, and then if you guys want to have anything to add, or we'll go to the next question. But startup is all about product. All you're trying to do is see if you have a product market fit. Scale up is all about people. So it is very different. When you are a startup and I'm mentoring you, all that matters is, do you even have a business? Is this actually a product that's going to work and people are going to buy? Because I don't need to worry about anything else unless you actually have a business here. That's mentoring a startup. A scale up, we're completely changing focus because the ability to scale is 100% dependent on your ability to build a team. You can't scale a 3-person company. You scale by having the leadership skills to build a team. So when we're dealing with a scale up, we're mentoring them on a whole different set of things. Your product works. You said that, right? I don't need to mentor you on the product side, but you need to learn to become a good leader, and you need to learn how to attract talent, motivate talent, retain talent, totally different things. So that's the difference. Mentoring a startup is about products and markets. Mentoring a scale-up is all about your people and leadership skills to build a team.
I think the important piece of this that is also so key, so many programs focus on mentoring the CEO. We just ran a scale-up program for companies between 3 to 40 million in revenue, and we ended up focusing on mentoring 3 to 5 people within every team and having those mentors work together. And it was incredible because the CEO may hear something, nod, agree with everything the mentor's saying, it sounds great. That doesn't mean they know how to translate that to anybody else on the team. So these new models of mentoring and making sure, because it is executive development, but beyond that, it's executive development for each of them within each role, which is really different depending on what they're doing, what countries they're going into, et cetera. Swethel, Mike?
I have just kind of one comment on this question. I feel like this is kind of the economic development question. How can we grow a company to really go after bigger things? And because there's a time where the company is just going to be comfortable. And I think part of the mentor's job, especially if they have that relationship, is to challenge the entrepreneurs to think bigger. And part of the problem with internationalization is some of the government programs, you feel like, oh, I'm just going to go on this tour. I'm just going to have the soft landing site. And for me, mentoring internationalization is saying you're going to have to get some plane tickets and you're going to have to spend some time understanding the markets that you're going to look at. It's just, there's no way around it. You're going to have to tell your family you're going to have to be out and about for a little bit of time. And to me, that's kind of the mentorship of that. Because yes, I can tell you all about certain markets and expertise, but at some point, if you see something as a mentor and an entrepreneur and they're kind of just kind of afraid to make that next jump. And it doesn't even have to be internationalization. It could be somebody from some like a secondary city and they want to expand further in the country, but it means they're going to have to get outside of their comfort zone, outside of their home, and get into other places, and you have to put the responsibility for them to understand how those other markets work, especially when you're still early and you don't quite have that game plan when you're going to another market. So that's just been a little bit of my experience around that.
Swathil?
See, if you look at the whole startups thing, it's, in my view, it just goes like, go through a metamorphosis process. Like, you're like from pre-seed to seed to, Series A and so on and so forth, right? It's the growth and late. And it's very different at every stage, the mentoring thing. So I just draw an analogy with like how a doctor see a patient and come up with some right diagnosis. So, the doctor just first to understand who is the patient, what's the problems, and listen to that and come up with the right answer. So it's every entrepreneurs, at different stage are different. At a very early stage, it's important to understand what the problem they're solving locally or regionally before they go international. And that's very important. For example, I mentor a lot of startups from India's largest startup ecosystem called Kerala Startup Mission. And many of the founders, when I speak, they, first thing they ask, how can I enter into Middle East market? So, but many of them, I feel that they're not ready. They first, solve the local problem or at least expand regionally or pan-India before they go international.
I think the storyline that we've all experienced is we find companies that are great, and sometimes the founders are not as great or exciting as the companies. I would love for you to address that, because sometimes you get really excited about a company and the opportunity, and the founder may just not be the right person. I'm a big believer in asking so many questions that they either leave me or just realize they should not be the CEO. But how do you deal with that? Because that's a really ever-growing problem. They have to go from being hustlers who are doing everything to all of a sudden becoming these executives who have all these people depending on them, need to communicate clearly, need to have that level of accountability. What does that look like for some of the experiences you've had?
Maybe I can add that one. I come across a lot of startups, on a daily basis. And you're right, sometimes the idea is great, but the founder is not fit for that. Or it could be other way around, that you think that he's a great guy, but he's working on a very poor idea, right? So how to balance that? So one of the things which we advise that, you create your support system, at least get the right team to work with you. The founding teams, even if a single founder, then in that case, you get a good advisory team, right? If you have a co-founding team, then you look at the complementary skills. But I think that's important to build that whole support system, right team at a leadership level, or co-founding team, or hire right people. That's very important. And other things you mentioned about that the CEO getting a lot of trainings, but the team are missing, right, big chunks. And that we see that it's a poor corporate governance. And this is one of the things which we work on, disseminating the knowledge about what's the corporate governance looks like, what's important, not just for the executive team, but also it trickles down to the lower level, because you need to have a right code of conduct, good delegation of authority, good financial governance. So it is not just about founding team; it's all about the overall organization.
Definitely, especially at the scale-up phase, where you already have the product market fit. Can that person be the executive who leads the team to the next stage?
I think part of it is, especially if you get to a founder early enough in their growth, I think part of it is you have to ask them to visualize where they want to be in the company. Do they want to just focus on what's next in product development? A lot of people who are more engineers that just love the problem solving of products. Do you really want to be a manufacturer? You're going to develop this product and just manufacture it and work on operations and control? Or do you want to think about the next thing? So you have to, I think it's good if you're a mentor to ask them, to visualize, where do you think, what role do you want? Do you really want to be the one who's managing everything? And CEOs can have different roles, too, so you can bring in a team around that. So I think it's really important for them to visualize that early for themselves, the founding team, what roles, and for them to actually have that conversation. I always say, take that 3-hour trip together, where they can just talk about these things and just spend time, because it'll kill the company in the long run if they don't talk about it. And then Your second question is kind of like, what is, if there's conflict between you as a mentor and the entrepreneur? And I've learned this the hard way. You ultimately, just like your children, they're going to live their own journey. You could tell them your life experiences and what you think based off your experiences, but you just have to let them live. And sometimes the relationship as a mentor doesn't work out. Like I'll be honest, I don't get blockchain a lot. So every time a startup in blockchain comes to me, I'm sure there's great things here, but I just don't understand it and I can't help you. I think sometimes you just have to admit, as a person, it's just not going to work out. It's just, it might just be the way the it's a relationship. Not everyone connects. Both of you might be great people. It just might not be the right relationship. So I think you have to understand that between a relationship between a mentor and an entrepreneur also.
Definitely. David, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think we can talk about what the engagement process would be, how to onboard, how will a team onboard a mentor, or how will a mentor evaluate. So I definitely made a lot of mistakes, and one thing is about setting the weekly mentorship time. I think for a lot of busy people for the team, we all think that, let's meet every Thursday. Well, that's not going to happen, right? And they usually contact you 3 a.m., and if you say, I'm going to bed, they think it's betrayal sometime, right? So I think my best thing is mentorship is like being a parent. You give to the point that you want to give, and to a certain point, you don't expect anything, because your job is to help them to succeed. Mm-hmm. So if you're the type of person that expecting a thank you note, then this is not a business for you. Because I definitely went through that. I never get pat on the head. Well, so I think, thank you, Jeff. I've been waiting this for 10 years. So I want to talk about the engagement process. I'm sure other people. So I think you touch upon on that too. Is actually the governance. So when we sit down, we actually, something like Mike said, we'll ask the team, please. Don't just tell me your requirements. Tell me your desired state and the impact you want to make in month 1, 3, 6, 12. You'll be surprised. This could take one session, or this could never complete. That's number one. Yeah. And number two, I will write a guideline, not an agreement contract, but how we work together. Are you, more like laissez-faire? More like you're on your own, and when you need it, we are there for you, or you're more expecting a regular check-in. So our engagement guideline went through 3 sentences to 6 pages. Mm-hmm. Because we do 2 countries in 10 months, and that's pretty intense. So maybe all of you have a lot of experience. Maybe we can share with everybody on what you think that engagement onboarding process is.
Jeff had a comment.
Yeah. Okay, I'll turn it back over to you guys for the engagement part, but I want to finish this question, because the question you asked was, what if the startup's good, but the founders, the entrepreneurs are not? And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to flip that a little bit, because it definitely begs the question that you guys started talking about, which is, why are you mentoring, right? What are you actually doing this for? And one of the things that I witness all the time is that people judge the business plan, right? They pick up the plan, They read the plan, they flip to the last page, and then they've made a decision about you. Your plan's not good, so they've lost interest in you. I will tell you, for me personally, and definitely not everybody in Silicon Valley agrees with me at all. I'm not looking for business plans, I'm looking for rock stars, right? And so your business plan might not be that good, but I can fix your business plan, I can't fix your DNA. So a lot of times I look at the plan and I'm like, it's not so good, but she's incredible. She is going to do 5 more of these things. So I am always mentoring. So to your point, a good business plan with weak people, if I can't change the people, I'm not interested in that. But even a weak business plan with a rock star. The rock stars are, so again, the goal for me isn't really whether your business is successful, it's whether I can make you better. And by definition, if I can help you get better, your business will become that way. And in fact, it's because we hunt for rock stars in the mentoring process. I'm just gonna say this, our companies Our companies were successful. So, our biggest one that you all know is Booking.com. That was a little tiny startup, right? When we started our businesses, it was a small startup. The company today, and I'm not saying this about money, but the company today is worth $118 billion for one reason, because we just went and stole everybody else's good people. We went out and looked for all the rock stars, and not only did we mentor them, we just hired them all. So the goal is to find people that you can make better, not companies you can make better.
Can I make one more comment on this? Like, I remember I ran a program one time where literally this woman startup just started crying because this mentor just hated whatever she was talking about. Wow. And I felt horrible. Like, I created this relationship and it's destructive, and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I think as a mentor, we have a responsibility for this to be a healthy relationship. It doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong, or you agree or not agree. It is your responsibility, even if you disagree with what they're doing, is to make sure it's healthy. So, I mean, when I sort of feel like someone's on the wrong path, I'll just kind of ask them, test your assumption. I disagree with you, and this is the reasons why, and my personal experiences. But why don't you just test that? If you think that market is good, do some tests. Like, there's no reason to argue about something. Just I think this is the reasons this might not work, and why don't you do a couple of tests to kind of confirm it? And maybe I'm probably wrong, but I think you're kind of just helping them think through how you can kind of. Again, because a lot of startup is just testing stuff and kind of getting them to think about, instead of arguing about something, you can just say, hey, why don't you, if you think that market is good, why don't you make a couple phone calls? I'll try to introduce you to some people. Maybe they can give you some input better than mine. So that's, again, please, as a mentor, you just cannot get in arguments with these entrepreneurs.
Well,
it's just not healthy at all.
Our job is to make them not dependent on us.
Yeah.
So if we ask the tough questions and help them figure out how to get the answers themselves, at some point they keep going and they might come back to us for whatever reason, but we have to build the people, exactly to what many of your points were. All right, one last thing, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions. So many of us have worked with companies who have other mentors, or we've run programs where we're recruiting people. And I mean, for EWC, we have hundreds of mentors. We run these mentor certifications all over the world. And the challenge keeps coming back to, it's not about the mentor matchmaking. It's about making sure the person understands their role and documents so that we actually can learn what's working and not working. Because sometimes those mentors have a relationship we never hear about when we're running the program. What would be one or two things that each of you would love to see when another mentor is coming into a program or might be working with an entrepreneur of yours? What do you think are the key things that you want to make sure that mentors know coming into it? We've already talked about a couple, but what are those things that will really make the difference to make sure that the team of mentors around the team you're working with, that you all can work in the same direction?
I'll just give a really short answer, so then we all can do that, so we can get to some live Q&A. For me, it's the question, why did you call me, right? If you're asking me to mentor specifically, why did you pick me? I need to understand what you thought I could do for you, because I've actually had times where someone would say, ask me that. They said, this is what I need your help with. Then I asked them who their other mentors were, and I said, you already have someone that does that, right? I probably should use my time for someone who has no help in that area, but you're asking me to do the exact same thing. If you're asking me to do something that your other mentor doesn't provide,
Yes.
That's more interesting to me. So I think that's my answer is, what are you expecting to get? What do you need from each mentor so that we're all adding value? We're not just repeating the same thing.
Especially when sometimes you might disagree. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
David?
It's very interesting. I came to in the point of my life. By the way, I'm 50. Okay, I came to the point that I want to spend with people who want to make the world better, and sometimes it's okay to point out that there's not a good fit. There's not a good fit. It takes a lot of courage to walk away from my relationship, and I've been choosing, and I think Susan been guiding me through that we are not super person, we can't save the world, and that's keep the time to the people. What Jeff said, it's not about what they're building, it's about if they are the next superhero. Actually, Jeff, you made a very similar comment back in 2015 in Korea. Yep. You gave us what that mentorship, that relationship is make the world better. So definitely getting that list, define the roles, and once you feel there's a cross, you can make the other mentor to end the relationship. So sometime now, I basically take a bow and basically walk away.
Great. Swetal?
I have actually problem with this matchmaking thing, to be honest. Sometimes you end up with a really wrong mentee, you know. I think a lot of these program or accelerators and all, they randomly just send because maybe they are under pressure, they want to meet.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not matchmaking, but
It's
we'll
called
come back to
KPI.
this.
Yeah,
KPI.
it's
We haven't
called
worked.
KPI.
He said the word KPI.
So yeah, it's random. It's like a randomization, right? Okay, that's done matchmaking. You go and meet with that mentor. I feel that's a really wrong way of doing because it's really, first of all, a waste of time of mentor and mentee. Secondly, mentees are given a wrong directions, right? In that case, so I feel that even if you end up with the wrong mentee or first thing you cannot turn them back. So you need to really, what I do that still give a time to understand how I can help. If I feel that I cannot solve the problem, at least I can direct to the right person. If I know the other mentors in the pool, or if there's none there, then I say, okay, I can put you in touch with the right person who can at least give an advice. So I think that's how you build a relationship. Secondly, I'm in like sort of a block certain mentor or office hours with Techstars, Founders Institutes, and many other organizations, Infitech in Dubai and all. So I get a lot of requests. It's just like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And very interesting, sometimes you come across a person and he says, they get some sort of a conflicting advices, right? Because they keep talking to different people, and then you tell something, I disagree because that person has said something, that person has said that. And of course, you don't want, sometimes other persons, and even if you don't know, you don't want to say that, he's wrong. So how to balance that? These are some very important to sort of create your own brand, as well as ensuring that you're given the right advice. And it really puts you sometimes in difficult situations when you're mentoring that. So what I try to do, like I'm more into the finance strategy and investment sides. Of course, in this industry, I've been for a long time. So we meet with a lot of interesting tech startups. So understand the technology at 40,000 feet. Know how to kind of create the marketing strategy and all, but we are not expert, right? So what I try to do is I still try to solve the problem where I can add value. If I'm not able to, I direct to the right people.
Do you have a comment on that?
When it comes to matching, when we talk about matching, a pure mentorship that you described, Susan, we have to understand this is a relationship. So are you going to do the Match.com website where, you kind of match on interest? Are you going to have the South Asian matchmaker woman who kind of, interviews everyone and kind of, matches you up? I tell you, I talk to programs, they all struggle with it. And the thing is, a relationship just takes time to develop. And it's hard to just say, you and you talk. You guys are a relationship. So I think the best programs I've seen have taken time for relationships to happen, because ultimately, I run programs where the mentorship relationship just fizzles. There's just nothing there. There might be something even there from an industry perspective or knowledge perspective, but the two people can't connect. And so it is a struggle, and this is where the cost and the resources to actually have people to manage a program kind of come in, unfortunately, because so many programs just want to match people and just kind of let it happen. And unfortunately, you need a program, you need people, and you need relationships to kind of work it out, because like any relationship you have in your life, it is that, and you have to kind of work with it. Again, I could talk about it for a long time, but I think you have to do sort of a self-connecting around that. But I won't talk too much more. I know you want to get to more questions.
That's all I want to talk about. So if anybody wants to talk about mentor matchmaking, I'm like the Yenta of mentor matchmaking.
You are.
Because it has to be about personality.
Yes.
And so if you're interested, we can talk about it after. All right, questions for our illustrious panel. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Frank. I run a program.
You're faster.
Thanks, David. Okay, we have to ask very succinct questions, and we'll have 1 or 2 answers, and that's it. Okay, go.
Okay, so my name's Trang. I run a enterprise program for people who live in public housing and so these are refugees. These are some of the poorest people, lowest socioeconomic people in Australia. And one of the struggles I have is to actually attract mentors to come and work with these people. And I was wondering if you had any tips, because these people are amazing, but people have this bias or this idea of what someone like this will be like, for example. And so how do I help mentors get over this mental bias to come and support these people to be able to build their economic inclusion?
Any ideas there, guys?
You know what you can do? First of all, look at your networks. That's most important. Or even look at the mentors working in the whole startup ecosystems. You can try approaching them. Even a lot of large organizations, like Big Fours, they do come forward to mentor because it links to their CPD things. I mean, we have mentors, KPMG, very senior partners from Deloitte and various other large organizations. So don't hesitate do approach them. And these organizations always has some sort of a CPD program, and they'd love to mentor. They don't charge. And then, of course, your network, you should reach to see that they can allocate certain hours for pro bono services.
So network is number one. Like you can't just put out Facebook ads and expect. Like you have to work your own network and call. That's number one. The thing I see programs struggle with is versus that are succeeding is you need to make the mentors part of your story. Like you need to talk about how they've helped the entrepreneur. Mention their names, because a good program will people you talked about Techstars. People talk about they want to be part of your program because there's a brand name behind it. So I'm a Techstars mentor. That what I'm saying is your story has to be their story, and so part of your vision and your purpose, you have to connect it with their purpose. And I think if you can do that, and I know it doesn't happen overnight. You have to kind of grow things, but you really have to be able to make it has to be more than, again, you call them up, you go to an event, you get coffee. You have to thank them. I've been to programs where they're not even thanking their entrepreneurs, as David said. At the program level, you should be thanking them. And I've had things where we've done a mentor appreciation day across an ecosystem where all the ecosystem actors just got together, put mentors on the stage and said, thank you. You are making an impactful...
Look at the diaspora too. Because there are probably people from the diaspora who, it might be a church, it might be some other way that you can recruit specifically for the diaspora of those refugees. So that would be a last thing. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Anne. I'm a tech founder. My name is Anne, and our company is Snowball. I'm a tech founder, so I'm interested in hearing that, and I will say, just an observation quickly, the word a rock star founder always triggers me, and the reason it does is because I think that sometimes it might be that to an investor or to a mentor, you don't match what a rock star founder is.
Well, you have to find the fit.
No, what I'm trying to explain is you don't match, as in you may not, and I'm speaking particularly with investors, you might not look like exactly the other rock star founders that have, your Mark Zuckerbergs or your Elon Musks or whatever. So
I'm sorry, what investors are looking for is very different than what mentors are looking for.
Yes,
and one of the most important things about this panel is the fact that what I consider a rock star might be different from all of them, because we have worked with such a wide variety of people. I can tell you, some of the people that Jeff and I have worked with just in the last few months, all women, technical, scientists, not who the world would view as the typical rock star. So I'm sorry it triggers you. Do you have a question?
I do have a question. I think that's a very valid point, and framing it in that, I think, is really valid. And the second question the question I wanted to ask is, knowing that mentorship is about the founder or the person you are mentoring, how do you approach the issue of the separating the founder from the startup, the self from the startup?
Jeff, you answer that, and then we have to keep going.
Okay, yeah, to your rock star comment, if you're talking to someone that doesn't think you're a rock star, move on, talk to someone else. They're wrong, you're right, you're a rock star, they don't see it. That does not mean, that shouldn't trigger you at all. What that should do is tell you you're talking to the wrong people. That doesn't make them right because they don't see you the way you need to be seen. So I would not let that bother you. But to answer your question of separating the people from the company, step one is if we believe, first of all, if I don't believe in you, I don't care what your company is. That's only my personal, that's what I was saying earlier. Yep. If I believe in you and I want to see you succeed, then question two is, what is this company? If the company is something I don't think is going to work, I'm going to tell you that honestly, and if you want to do it anyway, I'm going to suggest you get another mentor, because I cannot guide you if I don't believe that this business is going to work. That's just not honest. So that's the answer to the question. I'll just say, man, I love you. If you ever do something else, call me. I don't think this business is going to work, and I can't falsely encourage you. And sometimes they say, well, it's the only idea I have, and I say, well, let's talk. Maybe we can help you find something else to work on and we'll still mentor you. It's just an honest relationship.
Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Hi, I'm Keola from South Africa. So we scale companies medium-sized into international markets as well, capital access, market access. And what I find is we've been very successful at scaling companies internationally and, getting a foothold. But once they're in the other country and they're expanding rapidly, the mentorship model for me just doesn't really translate as well anymore, And what would be your strategies in terms of once they're in a market? For instance, I have a company that's expanding in Texas amazingly well. I just don't think that we're the right people to continue mentoring. And what are some of the strategies that you would recommend in that instance?
Yeah, I'll take this one. What we've had to do over the last 10 years now at Gen is we have 1,500 mentors all over the world who do different things. So we end up having, and again, so many of our startups or scale-ups that we work with end up with 3, 4, 5 mentors, sometimes at the same time, sometimes at different times. But depending on what your team is offering as a mentor, if they're still that global strategic advisor, you're still going to be at the table, even if they do have US or Canadian or Texas-specific mentors who might be helping with very specific US market entry growth, going into Latin America type thing. So you have to figure out if this is speaking to the value proposition of what they're thinking you're supposed to be doing, versus if there's still long-term relationship that should be there, it may not be communicated properly. So you have to look at what the expectation is for them and your team as they expand. Because it may just be a conversation that, we're going to continue working together, but sometimes founders, go to the next phase and they're like, thanks, bye. And they still love you, but they're just ready for the next thing. So I would look very deeply inwardly, talk to some of your founders. I'm sure they're happy to give you advice. I'm sure they have lots of opinions, and see what that looks like. And there's nothing wrong with you being this incredible value added for them to go, and then know that you're on to 20 other people to help them do that same path. And hopefully they become mentors for your other startups, right?
Jeff, have you always had a sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask if you've always had a mentor through your growth?
No, I did not, which is why I do it now. The whole time I was building companies and making mistakes and thinking, couldn't somebody have told me not to turn left here? So I made a pledge that when I had time, I would mentor as much as possible because I know what it feels like to be out there alone. So I did not always have mentors, which is why I'm sitting here.
We have one more question.
Susan, can I add to the
Yeah, go ahead.
question? It's a very important question when it comes to the growing global. Why the strategy doesn't work. There's two things very important. One about the understanding the cultural nuances of that the different market and the regulations, and that's where you need to build your the mentor network globally, where that they can address these things, because these are actually really important to understand when they go global, and then they see that you're really adding value to address those challenges when they enter into different markets.
Go ahead.
I just want to say you're all rock stars. Thank you so much. My question is, Kerry Anderson from Startup Centre Victoria. Our mentors rank more highly than the programs we run. how can I support the mentors? How can I help them grow, feel appreciated, so that we can grow this wonderful resource even more?
Mike, you want to take that?
I mean, I'm sure that the fact that you actually said that, I'm sure they feel some of that, because not many programs talk about, like, we're all about our network. Like, our network is so. I honestly, I mean, part of the frustrations, like I do focus groups of mentors when I work with programs. Part of their focus is, I'll talk to a startup and, a couple times, they know nothing about what happened afterwards. So if you give them like updates, if you invite them, like a good program will make sure that they're invited constantly to events. Again, putting them on stage and thanking them is it's more important than any sort of monetary thing, because they are, again, I try to say this, to me the ecosystem is, you see the maps of all these organizations. It's not that at all. It is people. This is the people's business. And when you start talking about all the people that are helping you and the mentors and the relationships, I'm sure you're going to be successful with that.
I would add to that, one of the things you may want to look at is figuring out how mentors can actually build parts of the program. Because sometimes there's just a disconnect, and when they have the one-on-one time, yay, but then the program itself may need some revamping. So bringing in mentors to be part of the program design, and at the core of all of it is having constant evaluation of the mentors so that you can really have the data to know who's impacting in what way, because you can get down to a granular level that when somebody meets with this mentor about finance, they actually end up with higher margins at the 12-month point. You can get those data points and say how much value each mentor added. That's who builds programs for you, right?
I just want to give you the simplest possible answer. Nothing is more powerful than the word thank you, and from the mentor. So, I'm sorry, from the founder. So tell them, not disingenuously and not a participation trophy. Don't thank me for showing up. Thank me if I actually made a difference. Sometimes people say, I flew 20-something hours to get here. Sometimes people say, why do you fly 25 hours to mentor people? You know what it takes? One person, and somebody did this yesterday. Somebody here wrote me a message that said, your advice changed my life, thank you. I'll fly 25 hours for that any day. Just say thanks and tell them to do that. That is actually why we're doing it, is because we'd like to make a difference. And if we actually do make a difference, make sure that the founders, you'd be shocked at how often the founders don't bother to say that, because that's the mentor's job. Actually, this isn't my job. Right? I don't need to be doing this. None of us do. We're doing it because we want to. So a simple thank you is a pretty big compensation for all of our time.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Susan said. Your mentorship needs to be part of the program. So one thing that we do, I always ask another program is, how do you decide on your demo day? Our demo day is decided by the most convenient time of our mentors. So they pick the day.
Nice.
And everybody work around it, because without mentorship, it's very hard to provide that clarity.
Well, I want to thank this wonderful panel for, no, you have no more time. I want to thank you all for being here today. We're all going to be here for a few minutes afterwards, so thank you for joining us. And David, please cartwheel us out.
Okay, all right.
Yay!